Good evening, everyone. I'm calling our regular council meeting to order for Monday, the January 27th. Approval of the agenda. The January 27, 2020 regular meeting agenda be adopted as presented. Moved, second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes. The minutes of the regular council meeting held January 13th, 2020 be adopted. Moved and second. All those in favor? Okay. Opposed? Carried. Before I introduce our BC Housing representative, there seems to be a lot of misinformation has been sent out. This meeting tonight is not a public hearing. It's a regular council meeting for BC Housing to make a presentation on the results from their public meeting they had at the Legion in December 5th. Thank you. That's all it is, some of their findings. They have not applied for zoning. This is not a public hearing. You'll be notified well in advance if the next steps take place. It'll be at a larger venue. It'll be at the Rec Center or the Legion or over 2 nights in another facility. So this is not a public hearing. So a lot of misinformation obviously has got out there because there's a big crowd here tonight, and all Naomi is doing is a presentation, as I said, on the results from the December 5th meeting. We're not voting on anything. Nothing's moving forward. There's been no zoning application put in. So after saying that, Naomi, welcome to our meeting. Naomi Brunmeyer is the Development Director for BC Housing.
Does this work without? Can everyone hear me?
No, she just got to turn his off.
And you can turn yours on the side. And the red button.
Why don't you stand up, Naomi, at the...
Actually, Jerry and I represent together, so it'd be great if we could sit here together. I'd just like to say thank you so much for allowing us to come and present our findings and let you know a little bit more.
Push your gray button there. There we go. Thank you.
To give you guys an update on the proposed project, what we heard at our December 5th meeting, and give you a little bit more information about the project. I also have Jerry Dybel with me. She is the Executive Director of the Hope and Area Transition Society, and that's our partner on this project. So the two of us will be going through our presentation today, and we look forward to being able to answer any questions that Council has. So just to give everybody a perspective, this program that we're proposing here in Hope is something that we're proposing all across the province. So I'm the director of the Lower Mainland, so I put forward many of these projects in Abbotsford and Chilliwack, City of Vancouver, Burnaby, Richmond, and so unfortunately many communities, particularly those in the Fraser Valley, are experiencing homelessness. So I just wanted to be clear that this is the Hope model, using your local nonprofits and understanding your community context, but you're not alone in this. And unfortunately, many communities are requiring these types of supportive housing projects. So just to give you an idea of what it is, it's a project where BC Housing owns the land. So we would be leading the application for the rezoning process when it comes forward. And if it were approved, we would be leading the design and construction of the housing. And we would work, our operations team would be leading the resident selection and provide operational funding. So this is a 100% funded project in Hope. Not only did we purchase the land without a land contribution like in many other communities from the municipality, we bought the land on our own. 100% of the capital and 100% of the operating is coming from BC Housing. When HATS comes into the table is that they'll be our operator. And so we often look, you're very lucky in a community like Hope where you have a local provider with such expertise, 27 years of providing services in your community, and since 2008 working with homelessness. They applied to a competitive expression of interest and were selected by BC Housing based on their experience. And they would be operating the housing, and so they would work with us to help with tenant selection, but they would be operating it, and they would also be the participants on the community advisory committee as well as BC Housing. And so I just think it's really, really important for you to know that because HATS is a part of this project, this makes it more about your community and for Hope. It's not a nonprofit we're coming in and bringing from another big city, and it's not BC Housing, a bunch of bureaucrats that's coming in to operate it. It's somebody who knows your homeless population, who's worked with them, and so that's why this is going to be a much more successful project as a result. Currently, the site that is occupied right now has the House of Hope. That's a 20-bed shelter. It's been open since October 2018. That's received, so we bought the site on behalf of HATS, and they've been operating it, and they receive operational funding for us. And that's a real, more of a shelter. It's a gateway for people who are experiencing homelessness. It provides all the essential services. And it's my understanding, and Jerry can expand on this later, that the shelter is consistently at capacity. So we want to make it really clear that what's operating there now is not the addition of what we're talking about going forward. So we're actually talking about housing. So this is shelter. It's our goal is to keep the shelter. We're designing around it to be able to have supportive housing. There are people along the continuum who are not ready to come into a suite with a closed door. They are perhaps more transient. They're maybe looking for shelter in and out of the shelter depending on what their needs are. Perhaps in the summer they're living on the camp, and in the winter or in the rain they come indoors. What we're talking about is permanent supportive housing where people can close the door. They are not coming in at night. They're not changing every day. This is supportive housing. You can switch the slide for me. So just a little bit more on the proposal then. So as I said, these are 52 new studio apartments. So they are self-contained suites. They have their own bathroom. They're studios. They have a little bed in them. They're around 350 square feet. And they have a basic kitchenette so that people can have a little bar fridge. They can have a little microwave, plug their kettle in, make their tea. It also has on-site support. So it's also designed to include a space for support services. As you're all aware, it's located at 660, 670 Hope Princeton Way. We looked at a bunch of sites. It might come as no surprise to people who are in this room that this issue isn't new, unfortunately, in Hope, and that we've been looking to provide a better service model than that was here currently, that had been operating in the community. And we've looked, we've had a real estate search for many years. Unfortunately, I know Jerry all too well, based on a lot of real estate searches and a lot of conversations that we've had. So when this site was located, we were very happy about where it was. We thought it was the right size, so we could get a sizable project on it. It's not tiny. It has connections to the utilities that are available on site. It's got compatible land use in the area. It's close to services. It's somewhat accessible to your shopping and health services and everything, and some accessibility to transit. So in a community like Hope, this is the gold star standard of a site that we would be looking for. So we were very excited when that came to our attention. The residents that we're talking about here are people who are either at risk or experiencing homelessness, and there are residents of Hope that are to be prioritized. So I want that to be really clear. Vancouver just built 600 units. They're not going to send their homeless to Hope where you have 52. These are for your people who are already in your community. So I really want you to know that we're here to support your community and the harms that everyone is experiencing, whether you're a homeless individual or a member of the community. So this is to be a solution that's specific to your community. And so like I said, they're self-contained units. They have their own bathroom and kitchenette. And then the amenity space includes a big kitchen, a commercial kitchen. It has a dining room. It has some lounge space, and really importantly, it has office space. So for potential Fraser Health Services to come in, and for a counseling room. So all of those are on the ground floor, as well as accessible units are on the ground floor.
How many storage is it?
And sorry, do you want me to answer those questions now?
No. Keep your presentation going.
Great. Just to show you what the housing continuum is, and just to give you an idea of all the different types of housing that BC Housing is responsible for. So on your left of this diagram, we have the homelessness types of services, and we go across all the way to affordable home ownership. BC Housing is the Crown Corporation that's responsible for all of these types of affordable housing. We're Crown Corp, we're under the Minister Selena Robinson, We will be providing also affordable rental in your community. Right now, we're working with the Mamala Queensland Housing Society. So just to let you know, this is supportive housing. It's right here on the continuum where the arrow is, but we're also working with your community to provide different types of housing that are needed as well. We understand that this population is only one population that's in need of affordable housing. So supportive housing can kind of be a bit of a nebulous term. It doesn't really always help people with, it's not a very descriptive term. So what we wanted to do is make sure that you understood that it is not shelter and that it is not just affordable rental. So it's somewhere in between, where what we want to do is, this slide contrasts what shelter is and what supportive housing is. And so what's really, really clear for people to understand is this is a private unit. This is a home like anyone else would have. It's an apartment building. It has a front door with a fob that people will get into. They pass through a reception. This is their home. They're residents of it. But the benefit here is it does come with a hot meal program, so they'll be getting one hot meal a day plus a light breakfast. They'll also have access to 24-hour staff and support services. So that's where this is really intensive. BC Housing has looked at the model of supportive housing and realized that for it to be successful, it needs to come with support services. It needs the basic services of your meal program and some health services, but it also needs access to employment skills, life skills, that sort of thing. And so that's why it's designed this way, but it needs that staffing model to complement it. So there will always be at a minimum 24 hours a day, 7 days a week staff on site. So these are just some pictures just to show you what they've looked like in other communities. And so after building 11 in Vancouver, we've got a pretty good model going forward. So we know what works. We've had a lot of opportunities, so you guys are certainly not the guinea pig. So we've learned a little bit about design, what kind of flooring can be used. The replicating unit of the modular product that we're using allows for it to be put together quickly, but it also has a real consistency to it. And this would be very similar to what we're proposing here in Hope. It's you.
Okay, so on-site services, as Naomi has already said, there will be a daily meal service. So they can choose to participate and come down and have a hot meal, or they will be able to cook in their own room and give them the autonomy as they choose, as this is their own residence. Individual case planning is really important to ensure that they're moving forward in their goals. So currently we have 3 homeless outreach workers. Those 3 workers will be embedded in the service model and be working alongside to help folks maintain housing. So that's the key here, is to help them maintain housing so that they don't end up back out on the street. Services and supports to be in place. What I really liked when we went on our tour to Cole's Place in Abbotsford last week is that they had a tenant committee. So the tenant committee really sort of helps design some of the services that they want to see on site. So we want to have feedback from the tenants to say, you know what, we want to have, games night, craft night, maybe, we want to bring in the library services. So just really listening to what they want to have in place so that they feel a social integration into the community. We already have currently connections with PCRS, Pacific Resource Community, who comes out and provides harm reduction services. We have Dr. Grover, who is very much an advocate and working with our clients. Currently in our emergency shelter, along with public health and nurse practitioner. So of course, for us it's making sure that we have that primary care network approach in delivering services on site into the community. For the folks that we're working with, they've already been marginalized and disenfranchised from the community. We want them to feel integrated into the community. So having services that they can engage in, plus also in individual case planning, it's saying to them, we want you to be able to go and access the rec center. We want you to be able to go and access your doctor. So it's not just necessarily that they're in their environment in their 52 units, but going out into the community and feeling like they're part of our community of hope. Next slide. So what we've heard, is this my stuff? It is. Okay. So the comment section, this is what came from the comments from December 5th and up to December 13th. These were some of the things that were vocalized. So the size of the building versus the need in the community, resident selection process, the logistics and operation, public order safety, cost of the new housing, process notice given to the community. So what I can tell you is that we wanted to be able to identify the need in the community. We already know the need exists, and I think council is very much aware of the need as well. Over many years, different interest groups have come to council saying, we have a loitering, panhandling, aggressive panhandling, people in the park. That's a symptom of homelessness. We see, social media explode with the issues that are going on in the community. That's a symptom of homelessness. We're coming with a solution, one of the solutions to say we want to bring people indoors so they're not loitering and panhandling in the community, that they have a home that they can go to. So we went out and we collected our numbers, our homeless outreach team, and we've identified that we are currently in our community working, whether it's in the shelter, in the camps, with 104 people. So there's 104 people in our community who are homeless, couch surfing, or at risk of homelessness, living precariously housed. Of that 104, 55 of them identify that they've grown up in Hope or they have a family connection in Hope. So these aren't people who are transient in nature who have just passed through Hope and are saying that they've now planted stakes in Hope. 55 of them are from Hope. So along the lines of identifying the need, we know that there's a need in the community. When we're looking at the residents, yeah?
Well, all these ones are spread out in the next slide. So
yes.
She should maybe
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
So what we know is, we have 28 people living in camps. We've identified the camps in our community. We have 15 of them that are currently active in our community surrounding Hope. We have up to 31 people staying in our shelter and in our transition house, and 45 people who are precariously housed. So the other stat that is important to note too in this breakdown is that 47 people are over 55 years old. So they're seniors in our community who are at risk and living homeless. And 57 of them are under 55. Okay.
So many people have their own ideas about why people are experiencing homelessness or how do people end up here. And so we always just put this slide here just as a bit of a reminder that the only way to homelessness is not just through mental health and substance use, and that's definitely a bit of a perception that people have, but they can be as a result of all types of things. And I think when you look in a community like Hope or anywhere across the Lower Mainland, where you see the lack of affordable housing and how it's squeezing everybody out of a market, so you're pushing everyone down a continuum until people start to fall out on the other side. And these are people who may have part-time work or not enough to be able to actually afford a rental unit here in Hope. There's a lack of even just available units here in Hope. And so I just wanted to remind people that it's not just necessarily around drug use, although we certainly will see mental health and substance use, and we hope that this will be an opportunity for people to work on that. But there are multiple different ways that people end up being homeless. It's not a homogeneous group, which is clear based on the stats that Jared just shared with you.
So the resident selection process will involve a coordinated access. Frank Trick is here from BC Housing. He's the coordinated access manager. So he will be involved in the process along with PATS, mental health, Fraser Health, having a discussion around who's the best fit for folks coming into supportive housing. And that is done through a variety of approaches. We do a vulnerability assessment tool on all of our clients. So we want to, there's 10 domains that we're looking at when we're looking at their vulnerability. And we want to see where they are to make sure that we're meeting their need. We also want to make sure that they are local individuals. So that they're connected to, a service, a doctor, a healthcare professional, that they are local. So they're not just showing up at the emergency shelter, and then tomorrow they're gonna be put into supportive housing. So we wanna make sure that there's a connection process for folks. Of course, it's not youth focused, so you have to be over 19, you have to be experience homelessness and at risk, you have to meet some basic eligibility criteria, so around income level as well. And we want to make sure that you are willing to support or be part of your case management plan. So it's not just living there, it's about you have a case management plan, you have a worker, you're going to be connected to services, and you're going to be engaged in your life and in your process throughout the time that you're there. So it's a never-ending process of case management with them. We will have a program agreement. I believe that that's in your package, so that's in draft form, and the Community Advisory Committee will certainly be fleshing that out in more detail to make sure that it meets the needs in our community, so open to input on that. And I just really want to emphasize that we want to have a healthy dynamic in the community, in the supportive housing, to make sure that folks are engaging and that they're living their full potential in the facility. So I want to, make sure that, that there's an understanding that there will be services on site to address their mental health and their addiction issues and any of the other services that they may deem to want to have in place. So logistics and operations. So yes, 24/7 staff. And when we say trained and experienced staff, it's also important to recognize that we want to have staff who come from a perspective that they're trauma informed. So working with people who have been homeless, maybe for the better part of their life, they come with trauma. And we want to have folks who come from that place of caring and compassion and understanding. So we want to make sure that our staff are carrying that same message along with them. Making sure that we have the appropriate health providers on site. It's ideal in its location that it's really 200 meters from the hospital and 200 meters from the mental health facility as well. So that is, they can go and they can meet the mental health worker at the office, or the mental health worker can come on site and use the clinic space there as well. We have an operational agreement that is in draft form as well, that we want to be looking at, making sure that we're meeting the community needs, along with the program agreement that the tenants will sign. Terms of reference for the Community Advisory Committee are in draft form, and pending the next meeting of the Community Advisory Committee will be selecting a further expansion of that committee to include businesses, local businesses around the premise, and citizens who would like to be involved in that committee as well. I believe we all have a common interest in developing a vibrant, healthy community. We may have opposing views on how we're going to get to that, but I think we all have similar views on how we want to create a healthy community for hope. Ongoing operations and maintenance, of course, is just part of the deal.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify that BC Housing has an operator agreement with PATS, and so we have laid out, which is in draft form, which we would share with you, where we've laid out what our expectations of a provider are for, and so we have an annual review, we go through their finances, we go through their outcomes, we look at how people are being, what their case management is, what their outcomes are for their individual tenants, that there's funding that's associated with that. And one of the things that's of benefit to you to know is that we own the property as well. And so that's our asset to maintain and to ensure that that it does, present well from the outside as well. We want to be a member of the community. And so there's that double oversight. You've got HATS, an experienced provider that knows the tenants, and then you've got the province working with HATS to make sure they're both adequately funded and providing the services that we're all here to talk about today.
Okay. There you go. Okay, public order and safety. Is that where we are?
Yeah, so I guess I think that this is that slide that sort of shows all of the pieces that are involved in this project, that it does talk about the safety of both the residents and the broader community. And so that's sort of where I want to start with, is that by creating supportive housing, you're benefiting more than just the residents. You're benefiting the surrounding community, because there are a lot of harms that are associated with homelessness that impact the broader community. And so when we're talking about safety, we're talking about the safety of our residents, but we're talking about the safety of the broader community as well. And so we fundamentally believe that bringing people indoors is the best way to help both the community of Hope, but also the residents that need those types of services. And so what our first goal is always making sure that we have an experienced operator. You don't get much better than a 27-year provider, so you guys are very lucky that this operator already has experience. They're the homeless outreach provider here as well. They know the future tenants. They've actually worked with them. They know who's already going to be a good fit in this building, and so that's what our first what we look for as an organization. And now, then the next piece here is resident supports. It's making sure that we do have all the appropriate supports in place, which really does come down to providing adequate funding for the development. And so BC Housing is committed to all of these projects to have ongoing operating. It's supposed to be around for 60 years. So we've made a significant commitment for the funding for that. And so there's different types of staff that will be on there. The other piece that I wanted to make sure that we talked about a little bit was that we've been already working with Fraser Health. And so BC Housing clearly has established a relationship across the valley and across all these projects in the Fraser region with Fraser Health to make sure that there is that clinical support that's on site, that there is in reach for our tenants or proper referrals made to them. And so they're very excited to see this type of housing to come to your community and in the way that it is provided. So we know that we had some stresses with them previously under the other model, and so they're very excited to see this, and we think that that's going to be the necessary piece to providing that clinical support for the residents here is making sure that Fraser Health comes. So the other piece that is important is that we're actually designing this from the get-go, knowing who the population is and what the surrounding community is. So we've designed it with something called SEPTAD principles, which is where you actually prevent crime from a design perspective. There's an outdoor amenity space for tenants. There'll be fencing, there'll be landscaping. We intend for this to look beautiful within your community. And so we already kind of want to make sure that you know that we're a neighbor. We're prepared to go through a formal rezoning and design review process with your staff here. Just because it's modular doesn't mean it can't look very beautiful. And we want this to be something that stands in the community as a benefit. So that includes looking nice from the outside. And also the last piece here is this community advisory committee, which Jerry has spoken to, but we feel strongly this is something we offer numerous communities usually take us up on it, and so we have different representatives, and each community advisory committee is a little bit different, so you have the opportunity to work with HATS and BC Housing to draft the terms of reference for what that community advisory will look like, but also who's to participate on it. So the intent of that is to meet, to discuss, to problem solve, to be proactive about any issues that might come up with the development.
The other piece that I think is important, an important element of public order and safety is to include community members, volunteers. And we heard that loud and clear on our tours of Abbotsford and Chilliwack, the importance of having volunteers to come and walk alongside the guests and the residents who live in supportive housing. So that there's that social integration piece again. You know, we want to be able to participate in the community and make sure that we're keeping the community as safe and as clean and as healthy and vibrant as we can. So having volunteer groups coming in and saying, hey, let's go and let's do a sweep of the Old Hope Princeton Highway and pick up garbage. Let's go downtown to Memorial Park and let's pick up garbage. And having that volunteer and having that guest doing that together shows that there's this social integration for the tenant and for the volunteer as well. It goes both ways. It's a two-way street when folks get engaged and learn more about a person's life and what's led them to the place that they've been.
So I just want to address the concept of housing first. This is to answer people's questions about why we would bring people in where they'll still perhaps engaging in drug use. It's usually one of the number one questions. So we call this the housing first approach. And so that the concept is is that the first step is to bring people indoors, that you're never going to convince somebody to work on any of the issues, whether that be estrangement from their families, mental health, maybe they need some help taking their medications, maybe they need to work on an addictions issue. You're never going to be able to address that when they're still living rough, or they're living on the street, or they're living in a shelter, or they're living on a couch. And so I want it to be very clear, it's not housing only, it's housing first. So we strongly believe that to bring people inside is the first thing. And so Jerry can probably speak to this much more eloquently on a very personal basis than I can. But the concept of what those first few months look like for people when they first come indoors, when they haven't been used to being able to close a door, when they haven't had that feeling of safety and security where their things aren't going to get stolen, where they can actually come inside with their pets. And that's a lot of times why people are staying outdoors, because they love their dog more than anything. And I know that firsthand. First my husband goes, then the dog. So, but we want it to be very clear that we understand that that's not the only thing that needs to provide. We're not just providing housing. We're committed to providing the support services that are actually really necessary for people to move on. We just feel that it's better to meet them where they're at than opposed to imposing something on them so they can't come inside at all. That we don't feel that that's ever going to work. We've seen how that hasn't worked in the past. We're in the most massive crisis that we've seen around substance use, and that certainly isn't going to be the model that's going to prevent those people from having serious harm or creating serious harm in the community. So first bring them inside and then start to work with them at their own pace. But as Jerry said, they are to sign a case management agreement, they are to sign a program agreement, they are to be there to work on what their issues are that have led to where they're at. And it's usually at their pace and in the order that they choose to. So this is a slide just to sort of imagine, so we could do nothing. The province has many other priorities that we could invest in, and so why is it that we've chosen to invest so significantly? The capital side of this program is not the expense, actually, it's the ongoing operating. So imagine this is committing the province to 60 years of funding, and why is it that we're focusing on this? And so we wanted to be really clear that this is of actual benefit right to your community. This isn't a bottom line of the province is trying to reduce everything. This is going to have a real impact on your community, and particularly around municipal services. So if you start thinking about bylaws, trying to move people from the encampment, trying to stop people from panhandling, whatever it is that is a public nuisance that's in your community, we're hoping that this can be part of the solution to work on that stuff, that it will be a real benefit to both of the residents and to you that way. It's also, they use less ambulance and hospital services, and so for the real emergencies that matter to everybody else, they'll be able to have time for those funds to be addressed. I think that people know you're happier, you're healthier when you're engaged in your community, and so what we're hoping is that overall that's going to lead to some more positive changes in people's lives, making them more productive members in your community, and perhaps decrease their substance use and have them have greater social connection. And these are then people that can spend money in your community. So then they become perhaps contributing members of the society. So this slide just shows you the cost of a hospital stay, of what all these dollars could do, as opposed to investing it into supportive housing, which is an asset to your community for decades. And then just some other research that we've done. BC Housing has an entire research department. We feel strongly that we need to be able to academically have that rigor around the supportive housing model, around anything that we're proposing. So we actually do go, we do create research, and so these are just some economic values. So a lot of people do care that there is some sort of social value, but they also care that there's an economic value, and this is where supportive housing shows that it's got both. It has an economic value and then a social value as well. And then just some other things that have come up around people's concerns is around property values. So we actually thought that was a really interesting one. We wanted to have a look at it. Unfortunately, the market hasn't done a great job for anybody's property values, but we did look at 13 different cases around supportive housing sites to see if that happened, and it was the same as any other community. The same real estate trends were happening in those. So if there was a dip in the overall market, there was a dip the size social housing unit, no more, no less. And then the other one that people do ask a lot about is around police calls. And so we do know that the shelter does have police calls. They could be police calls that are helping the residents of the shelter. They could be the victims themselves, or they could be causing the issue. What we do see is once there is a supportive housing development in a neighborhood, there's an actual initial blip. Because people are very vigilant, they're looking, they're watching, we are also eyes on the community, so there's a tiny blip. And what we find out is that it tends to be anybody on the street is as a resident or a homeless person or of concern, and then we see it actually decrease. So there's a little bit of a blip because there's a bit of a lightning rod for the police, and that's when having the 24-hour staff, the reception who can work with the police and say, oh, there's nothing going on here, we're okay, everything is fine. And then those police calls drop over time. And so that's also a benefit too, is knowing what's a real emergency for police. And certainly, Jerry and I will say, if one of the tenants is committing a crime, please call RCMP, please engage the provider. We definitely want to know that. But this will allow us to sort of take away those calls that aren't of the interest of the police. So as the mayor eloquently said, we are the pre-application stage. So all we have done so far is we did buy the site, absolutely, and we are working on a design and we are having engagement meetings, but we have not submitted the rezoning application. We're following the rules that are required under the Local Government Act, engaging with the community, making sure that we get it right. Here in Hope, making sure we've heard all your concerns, making sure we've met with community members, making sure we're working with Jerry, making sure we're meeting with council. And so our goal would be to submit an application in February and then go through the formal municipal review process, which includes first and second reading, public hearing, as any project would go through. So we're right at the very beginning, coming to talk to you. And then just to let you know, we still have our community relations at BC Housing email. There is still the Let's Talk, which allows you to put input in. We've actually, we catalog it all, we beam it out, we print the results of that. So that was part of the information that Jerry shared on the December 5th, was also part of the online feedback. And so that does actually go somewhere, and it is staffed. So there is people that live put those questions that come in through that, both those things. They ask the development people, they ask our operations people, so they are answered and they are in real time. So I would encourage you to look at those resources for other pieces of information.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Naomi and Jerry. Sorry, I didn't introduce you at the beginning. I didn't know you were going to co-present. And Matt Frank, nice to see you again in the back. Thank you for coming tonight. So that's it for the presentation on BC Housing. We'll now go to staff reports. Staff reports this evening? None?
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Committee reports? There are none. Mayor and council reports. I'll start off tonight with a couple items. I attended the Fraser Valley Regional District Corporate Services Committee, and there's nothing relevant for our community at this time. I attended with 4 members of council, and myself, we did our due diligence and had a tour of the Abbotsford Supportive Housing with Mayor Braun. Then we went to the Chilliwack location. Part of our fact-finding mission was to visit those 2 sites. All Canadians alumni games happened on the weekend. It was a very good event. So Shannon's here. Thank you, Shannon, the staff, the management, and the Lions Club for organization and participation. It was a very fun day. Spoke to a lot of visitors from that town. Chilliwack, the first one I spoke to was fellow from Richmond. It was very exciting. We were there. I hope you come back again. Attend the Recreation, Culture, and Air Park Services Commission. We elected a new chair, Terry Ray, Charlene Harrison Hyde was appointed our Hope member at large.
Oh, gee, I'm sorry.
We did our grand review for 2020. That's all I've got to report at this time. Councillor Smith's a bit noisy, but go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, January 21st attended homeless housing
project tours in Chilliwack and Abbotsford, so this one who all put that together between staff and Abbotsford players, Ron as well, read us there too. So good information, go check it all out and see what hands on here. January 25th, Van Chilp hosted the game with Montreal Canadiens, and I put on. I just got a little blurb here that came from the organizer that Shannon I got sent over to me. So as the organizer said, I personally want to thank you tremendously for all the time and effort you put into this event. I could not have asked for a better partner. When I do these production type events, I'm never certain how things will ever go since I'm not on site to get the word out and sell tickets. I'm very happy with how everything was handled. If you and your family are ever in Montreal, I would love to finally meet you. That was from the Montreal alumni coordinator to Shannon Jones. So I think you can get a big thank you. That's the most people have seen in a hockey rink since the junior B team was in town. So I think they did a very good job. It was fun playing against them, but it wasn't fun playing against them at the same time. So good kudos to you guys and your team. So, and that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Councillor Erickson.
Okay, thank you. So I attended the HATS meeting at the hospital this week, last week I should say. And then I also attended the grade 12 graduation for the welding group. I don't know if all of us know that the high school puts on this welding program every 2 years. And there were 12 students from our area, Agassiz. Where else? The other?
Oh, and it's open to all of the students.
There were 12 students that
This particular
graduated.
time was Agassiz.
Marvelous to see these students and what they're doing. We toured the site, we saw their wells, and it's really nice. I'm glad our high school is doing the program. I also toured the homeless shelters and the new supportive housing in Abbotsford and Chilliwack. And I had an advantage show economic development. We're looking for a new economic development person for Hope area. We did some interviews, and so we're going to send up for another search for someone else. So the ones that came in, the right ones for we thought for Hope. So we're looking again. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Medlock.
Bit of a, oh, it's not on, there we go. Bit of a broken record, we've all been to the same events, but yeah, same thing, Montreal Canadiens alumni game, I was there with the Lions Club helping sell 50-50 tickets, raising money for the skating club, and that was good. There was a lot of people there, so we sold a lot of tickets. It was a good fundraiser for them. They helped out too, they had some of their own people there helping. So again, thanks for getting that event to town. I know it doesn't happen in small communities like this very often, so it's pretty cool when we can get something that big to happen here. I also did the tour of the supportive housing facilities in Abbotsford and Chilliwack. And, I'm really glad I went. I've driven past both those buildings, so I knew where they were, but didn't really know what went on there, what they looked like, or how it worked. And I got to say, I was impressed. Their programming was. It's good how they have things working with security, so they monitor who comes and what comes into the buildings. And it dispelled a lot of the myths and the rumors I've heard about, you know, if you're looking for some stolen items, you go to those places. It just can't be. It's just not how they are. They're well organized and well run. And I agree. I think we need something like that in the community. Of course, we're talking about lots of the challenges of the location that they've selected and things like that. So we'll continue to discuss that as time moves forward here. But I gotta say, those tours were good, and I was impressed. Our next event meeting will be on Tuesday, February 18th, which will be our quarterly joint meeting with the council. So I think everybody in council has had to invite Councillor Smith is the one that can't make it. So that'd be good to have everybody there again for sort of an update on what's going on. And we've been working hard on our work plan for the year, changing the format of it, so a little bit of extra work's going on to get that hammered out. But that's kind of what's going on. And I think that's all I have to report.
Great, thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Great. So I also attended the wellbeing celebration for the kids, and I will echo what you say, it is life-changing for 12 people every 2 years and getting them set in the right direction. So it's a good program. And also on the 21st of January, I was not on the shelter tour, I was at the Golden Angels. So we had a very exciting conversation about garbage pickup and the new program, and lots and lots of questions. Many I had no idea what the answer was. So I've contacted staff to see if we can have an expert come and speak to the Golden Agers, and we're in the process of getting that happening, because I think it's good that they have accurate answers, not Heather on the spot and make up stuff. So that was really exciting. They were pleased to see that 753 customers are now being billed by the District of Hope. Got a big cheer on that one. The pancake breakfast is going really, really well. They used to do a potluck in the afternoon, but attendance was dwindling, so they tried this pancake breakfast, and it's really going well. So the next one is February the 1st from 9 till 11, and they get about 40 to 50 people that come out on a Saturday morning. So it's very great, and that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Tron,
Thank you.
you still hurting from that hockey game?
I had 3 hockey games this weekend actually. But yeah, I want to thank Shannon and obviously everybody involved on Lions Club as well. It was a great hockey game that they put on. I spoke with everybody in the dressing room, had a chance to. Some of the players ranged from playing junior hockey at their time, and some of the guys who said that's some of the most fun they've ever had playing. I mean, in my perspective, we were what, 20 saves short of a win?
12. 12. I let 5.
Yeah.
And 5 in the 1 period.
Yeah. But
1.5 periods. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
yeah, from what I understand from just talking to people, they echoed just such a great time they had, as well as everybody actually in the stands as well. I mean, to not only I can understand how easy it'd be for someone to have fun just actually playing, but if everybody in the stands also has a good time too, it just echoes the fact that it was just a great event that was put on. And I also want to remind people that this weekend they're actually having the BC Mixed Doubles playdowns at Hope Curling Club. So this would be to see who plays in the provincial playdowns all the weeks, 2 weeks. Then I'll be also hosted in Hope as well. So there will be, I know there's at least one local couple of curling here in town. But yeah, so there's lots of exciting stuff coming to the curling club in a couple weeks as well. So really excited.
Great. Thank you for your report. On to permits and bylaws. Mr. Gill, do you need to speak to this at all before I do my ramble? No? All right. I'll get right into it. We're going to be talking about the District of Hope zoning amendment bylaw number 1466, 2019, for 320 Forest Crescent. The motion reads that District of Hope zoning amendment bylaw number 1466, 2019, to rezone the property at 320 Forest Crescent, legally described as Lot 8 District, Lot 80, Yale Division, Yale District. I'll read the whole thing. Plan AKP 53313, PID 018984118, from single-family residential, RS1, to two-family residential, RT1. Be read a third time this 27th day of January 2020. Mover? Yeah, move and second, discussion?
A question, I guess, through the staff on the process. So for third reading, at the time of adoption, do we still have a time to discuss it on that? Or is this the only chance for discussion? There's no discussion at adoption?
There should be no discussion at adoption.
So this is our last time to discuss it. Okay. Then I will discuss it. It seems like from the public hearing that most of the concerns were around like the size of the house and where vehicles would be parked. Because as it stands, it is an RS1 designated lot now. So a single family residential home of any size allowable by the geotech report could be built on the house without any questioning of the neighborhood, right? The only reason the neighborhood has been involved is because it's been a request to rezone to RT1. So I think it would be nice if the property owners could maybe give some sort of certainty to their neighbors about the size of the home and answer those questions about where the vehicles would be parked. Although I understand that the zoning does recommend that, or not recommend, require that all vehicles must be parked off-site. But what does that look like if it's an RT1 zone and it's a duplex? Does that mean that it has to provide for 4 vehicles off-site or 3 or how many? So I guess those questions, just the communication to the neighborhood, I think would help this process along. So I think I would like to hear some more discussion, because I'm still on the fence as to go forward or not, if this is our only opportunity to discuss it. I'd like to maybe slow it down and get those answers before we make a decision, so that there's a bit more comfort. Because at this point, there was absolutely no resident that came out and spoke in favor, there was only opposition. We'll talk about it some more.
Yes, Councilor Larson.
Through you, so is this the only area that double occupancy is permitted in that area? Has anybody had any a suite in the basement? Have you approved any of that, where they have 2 occupancies per resident? Or is this the only one and only in that area, do you know?
Your worship, through you, no, this is probably a first. If anything, let's say if there are any suites, it's probably not permitted, but it happens.
But we don't have any that have been zoned for many suites? Basic suites? Or
In the immediate area, no.
In this area, yeah. And is there any restriction on the size if it was a single-family home? Could they put 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 square foot home on that property?
The likelihood would be not a 6,000 square foot. Are we talking building envelope or gross floor area, meaning all the floors and
No,
calculated?
building envelope. I see, what I'm wondering is if you have a double occupancy like a duplex, they could put 2 smaller ones and it only comes to 3,000 square foot, 1,500, but they could put a 3,000 square foot single family home.
Same footprint.
So it's the same footprint. So that's the only thing I'm wondering, is there restriction because of the geotech area? I mean, when you go there, it's quite a hillside, so they're gonna have to.
What I can state from the report, there are recommendations made in the report that would be, they would have to adhere to in order to sort of get that safe building envelope, but they've identified where it is.
I didn't go onto the property yet. So it must be up on top then, up on the top shelf.
It's been on the market for quite some time due to the sort of geophysical challenge of the site being sloped, past events. I think people haven't attempted to build on it. We've always put the rider on it to anybody that was looking at the property for purchase. The fact is that due to the contours and the past history, that a geohazard assessment should be conducted prior to considering any sort of rezoning change or even to build a single family dwelling.
But you said there was a geotech study done.
Yes, there has. So now, as for this application for council, yes, there was a hazard assessment done. There's been a previous hazard assessment that was conducted as well, which basically describes why the event occurred over back in 1995. And it was a block culvert on the old Old Princeton Way that sort of pushed, it made a debris flow event occur.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Stewart?
I'm just curious, once this amendment either is passed or denied, is there further discussion with the applicant about, you know, fitting into the neighborhood, not building a large monstrosity of a home, things like that? Like, is there further discussion about the development at this point?
Your worship, through you, that would be strictly voluntary from the applicant. The municipality does not want to stick to sort of creating a difference in highest and best use. An owner should have some freedom in what they decide to do with their land.
Point of decision making. Councilor Medlock?
Yeah, since we're at the point of decision, and I'm not comfortable making a decision yet, because I think that there could be some progress made if there was better communication and some decisions made and communicated to the residents. So I don't really know what the process would be to slow this down and not do a third reading now, but wait until there's been some more discussion, raise the level of confidence with the neighborhood. It's early.
So, Ms. Bellingham, the council would defeat the motion, and we could bring it to another meeting. We do this, okay? So that's an option.
Or we could just table it.
We could
table it as well.
Same
We
thing.
should be starting to pass this.
Yeah.
This motion would just be.
But before we take, just one question.
No, I'm not
Before-
there yet.
well,
No, you go ahead.
Before we did that, what process would be done? Is it gonna be on staff? Is it gonna be on the, like what you're asking, is it gonna be on the staff? Is it gonna be on the applicant? And then how do we know that the residents are gonna get that information and either be comfortable with it or still against it? How are we gonna get that information back to us at this table? That's the problem I see.
Your worship, through you, if we do table it, we go back into a notification process and a public hearing.
I'm not saying public hearing, okay.
Because we are introducing new information for
Okay.
public consumption.
So the process starts over. Councilor Medlock?
I'm okay with that if it, I'd like to see the landowner obviously get what he wants, but I'd only like that if it's a level of confidence around his neighbors. The sticky point I think that would be interesting to bring up with the neighbors is that an RS1 home building lot size could provide for the same footprint as if it was a RT1, and I think that's, like there's nothing to stop them from doing that to the current zoning. I think that's an important point that needs to get made, but as Councillor Smith alluded to, I don't know how, it's not on us to do that, it's not on staff to do that, it's really up to the landowners to make sure they have that communication with their neighbors and get that level of confidence. So I guess that would be the process then. If we tabled that back to public hearing, we would then have another opportunity here with the residents say, and move on with the decision at that point, so. Do I need to make a motion to table it, or
I just have a
maybe I'll take
question.
it?
Councillor Stewart?
I'm just curious, is there then additional costs if it goes back to public hearing?
Your worship, for you, yes, the cost would be bared by the developer in this case.
Just advertising.
Advertising, notification, and signage at the site. But as staff, we need a little bit more clear direction as to what information are you requiring to sort of be disseminated amongst the neighborhood.
Well, what I'm seeing is, I wrote down a bunch of notes from concerns of the residents, and most of them have to do with parking, like on-street parking versus off-street parking. Taxes going up, things like that, I suppose, but I don't know if there's a way to sort of take those items and address them independently from the landowner to do that himself with the neighbors.
So that, like, for my clarification and maybe for the landowner as well, is this more of a site plan that's sort of being looked at in accordance with the recommendations of the geohazard assessment?
I think if there was some of those questions were asked, they asked what the place was, where the site was going to be, and where the vehicles would park, and of course at this point they didn't know any of that, size of the house or anything. While that may or may not be important, at least having an answer might bring up a level of certainty, right? Like, the way I'm looking at it is if I had to vote on this today, I would probably not vote in favor of it, because I think it's important what the community feels about the proposed rezoning. In this case, I feel like the community, there's enough people who have brought it forward that they're against it. But I think that the concerns could be alleviated if they had more information. I don't think it was a dead set against it, they just needed the information, confidence. That's how I see it.
Councillor Tron and then Councillor Erickson?
The way I see it is, I know obviously parking was brought up a couple times by a couple different, people spoke. But one of the main reasons that I kind of drew from it was privacy. And in my opinion, there's no way to get around it. Like the way the lot is, I mean, you're going to be looking down on the regardless. I mean, it's just the way it is, the way the property line. There's no way to build, even if it's single family dwelling, you're not going to, you still can't build a fence that high. So I mean, there's no really way around that. I know that was one of the things, but even if we go to another meeting, there's no way to give him the right answer. Like, there's no answer you can give that guy to make him feel better about it. But I know parking is a big thing, but I mean, that can be, parking's an issue regardless. I mean, there's really nothing else you can say to kind of remedy that either, but that's my opinion.
Councillor Erickson?
Yeah, through you. I think what concerned me most was nothing was actually planned. We don't know what size of the building, what the road is, how many. I think if they had a site plan, a preliminary site plan, and the neighbors saw the site plan and saw the size of it and where it would be on the lot and how wide the roadway would be and where the roadway comes out, have a decent site plan and adhere to that site plan, then I'd be more willing to be in favor of it. But right now, it's just, we don't know what side the building will be, where the building's gonna be sitting. I'm not in favor of that right now.
Okay. Staff, do you have enough information now? Move.
It's a bit wishy-washy.
It's still wishy-washy.
Any other side?
From my perspective, and this is just my opinion, we'll probably get to the site plan portion of it, if, let's say, we do proceed this route. I think the argument that's gonna come is what the design gonna look like of the house, and at this point, we're still at the beginning stages, we still need the zone in place prior to that, and that's an added cost for the property owner, and the applicant here. The site plan end of things, yes, to identify, let's say, parking spots that are or within the building or building footprint. I think ideally that's what we would probably want to use as a building footprint, not an actual design drawing of a house or.
Yeah, just a square house, parking lot.
Then the neighbors could see it, and they'd have some idea what's gonna be there, instead of just, we're just dreaming.
The aspect that we don't want to go down is, and it's protected by the charter, is the fact that we don't know the user and we cannot discriminate against the user. User activities, so say parking on the street, or that we can't sort of predict. It could happen, it can happen.
All right, to staff, then, I'm confused now. The next step forward, so we're gonna table. Okay, one more point from Councilor Medlock.
Yeah, I think the one point that's sticky for me is just the allowable uses as is versus the difference between what they want to. As far as the concerns go with parking, the size of the footprint of the house and privacy issues perhaps, that either can or make no difference whether the zone has changed or not, I guess is my point. Letting the residents realize that that is a residential lot that could have a building on it. And then this is the other option of doing it this way. If that makes any sense.
All right, so we need a motion to table. Second, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Will you be communicating with everyone, all the parties involved? Thank you. Correspondence, for information correspondence, list dated January 27, 2020 be received. Move second, all those in favor, opposed, carried. At this point, we move to any questions from the public, items relevant to the agenda.
Hi,
Hello there.
does relevant to the agenda include questions about the delegation?
You can ask a question about the delegation, but council may not be able to answer it, but so come on up to the podium and
Oh,
Let
I'll
us know
just
who you
stand
are.
right here.
let us know who you are
I have
first.
Charlene Harrison Hines, and I have a teacher's voice, so everybody should hear me.
Okay.
Do you have any idea when the public meetings are going to be?
It will be dependent when the applications are put in for the zoning, and then if, I would guess, late March. Is that out of line for staff?
Your worship, through you, it depends on staff workload, there could be other applications in the queue.
In the queue as well, yeah. You'll get plenty of notice.
At least two editions of the Hope Standard, so, I mean, there's gonna be between a month to 2 weeks notice for the public,
Okay.
by various channels.
All right, and after careful review of the attachments to your agenda, and seeing what was on the screen, is this the only feedback that you have received about the comments that were made on Let's Talk Housing? Did you receive the full transcript of all the comments?
From BC Housing?
Yes.
No, we did not.
I would suggest that somehow they're still up there. I would strongly suggest that you take a look at them, just to give you proper feedback, because I don't believe that they were accurately represented on what was put up here. and I have a lot of questions, which I won't bother you with now, I'll send you an email, but how they verified some of the points that were made, the information. I'm not a person without compassion for any of these people, but I'll state it right now. I would like to see this as a dry project versus a wet project. And y'all can do your own homework on that one.
You'll have the opportunity at the public hearing, and they will be attending the public hearing to answer all your questions as well.
I just wanted this on tape. That's all.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
my pleasure. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please state your name and come on up.
My name is Ed Snow, and I just live directly across from the property in question. In 1995,
Sir, which property are you talking about?
328 Forest Crescent.
Okay.
Okay? 1995, a slide happened, and it went right through where my house is built today. I don't know who put it back and made it look good. They put a half retaining wall up about yay high, and the rest of it, they put boulders and let it go. Now we're going to look at somebody coming in and going to build on this slide, disrupt it all, to dig it all up again, and there's no retaining wall to hold it back. How many of you have been on that property and walked up to the top? There's not room to turn a car around in the top, let alone build a duplex with parking for 4. There's a big tree on that property that BC, or your property, and it's right on the property line, that BC Hydro went around and put power into my house. Now, the driveway goes within 2 feet of that tree. Now, you're going to run heavy equipment up and down that driveway to build it. What are you going to do to the roots that are half hanging out of the bank right now? If that tree comes down...
Yes, sir.
The public hearing is closed, and council was not to hear any further input on the zoning
Oh, you're right.
application
My
after the
apologies.
public hearing.
Yeah.
The opportunity to present your information was at the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no further input is allowed until
Sorry, my
another public
apologies.
hearing.
We hear you.
But there will be another public hearing.
There will be another public hearing.
And
Yeah.
will you people please take the time and walk up there, the snow is gone now, and take a look and scratch your head and say, how are you going to build a duplex and parking for 4? Rentals usually mean children. Where are they going to play? There's not room up there. It's in the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, sorry, you're done, sir. I apologize. I shouldn't have let you go on. We've already cut you off, and you're done. Sorry. Next one. Come to the next one.
I waited this one to make my case. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions related to the agenda from the public? Hearing none. The next meeting is February the 10th at 7 p.m. right here in the council chambers. And need a motion to proceed to close meeting under Section 90 for labor and employee relations and Section 90 negotiations to propose municipal services. Yeah. Move in second.